What's going on, guys? We've got an interesting day in the market. Growth stocks, anything that's risk on, is basically selling off. Bitcoin dropped a bit. Bitcoin miners are tanking. Growth stocks are selling off. While your medical stocks are doing pretty good today, while your boring PGs and Cokes and such are doing okay today. Actually really good. A nearly 2% move is a good day for them. But let's talk about what's going on. Why the sell-off? Well, we do have the upcoming Jackson Hole speech on Friday, and we've got an interesting setup here. We've got stocks near all-time highs, we've got inflation rising, we've got job weakening, we've got signs of a rough economy. And Evercore analysts, Evercore ISI, they argued in a note on Sunday that Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole could prompt stocks to retreat as much as 15%. And like they say here, the stakes are high with both sides of the dual mandate muddled, meaning inflation and job data. And we talked about yesterday how a lot of job data was revised downward massively, whereas recent inflation data like CPI, PPI have been actually rising, and recent reads have been revised upwards. Job growth has fallen to its slowest 3-month pace, ignoring the pandemic, since 2010, when unemployment was about 9%, which is double what it is now. And of course, CPI rose more than expected, PPI rose more than expected, and this balancing act for the Fed is looking like they're going to topple over and fall. And we looked at this yesterday, but to reiterate, our forecast was at 2.5%. We received a 3.3% read. The previous read was 2.3%, revised upwards to 2.4%. Maybe 3% is becoming the new 2% for the Fed, because we have not been able to keep inflation at 2% to save our lives. And if we see job data continue to weaken, the Fed will be forced to cut. They're already very likely to cut in September. But they're going to be cutting with inflation up here near the 3% range and above in some cases, as with PPI here, which is a sign of a worsening economy. They aren't over here cutting rates with inflation at their target. A lot of this is due to job data. They are worrying about it. And this sums it up pretty well about the Jackson Hole meeting. Clues as to what may come next at the Fed September meeting will be in focus, as stubborn inflation and a faltering job market make officials' next move a particularly tricky one. That basically sums it up pretty well. What is the answer to this uncertainty? Bitcoin. And there isn't a 3-year period where even if you buy the top on Bitcoin, as long as you wait within 3 years, you will be in the green. And that is if you literally buy the top and don't average down, which averaging down is so beneficial. You're able to buy double the amount of Bitcoin if it's 35,000 versus being 70,000, for example. So averaging down is very powerful. But even without averaging down, there's no single 3-year period in time where you don't go back in the green, even if you buy the top. The US has $37 trillion in debt. This number, as well as the money supply, have skyrocketed in the last 15 years. We printed tons of money during the recession of 2008. We printed tons of money during the 2020 pandemic. And we are always getting money pumped into this system. It is regular. And like the Fed wants their 2% target of inflation, that is literally their goal. They want inflation. The US runs on money printing. More fiat currency chasing a fixed amount of Bitcoin supports a much higher price, years and decades from now. And while in a 10-year period we are never going to see a 47,000% gain ever again, because Bitcoin grows in market cap, the multiples will be less as cycles go on. It is very hard to say no to Bitcoin, when at the worst you have maybe a 3-year wait if you don't average down to get back in the green, if you snipe literally the top. Bitcoin follows a cycle, if you didn't know. Every 4 years, it basically has a halving, which means half of the amount of Bitcoin is getting pushed into the circulation. Mining rewards decrease. But like I said, there's no 3-year period where you aren't in the green, even if you buy literally the top. 2017 of December. By December of 2020, Bitcoin was breaking out again. If you bought the top here, November of 2021, here's November of 2024, where we start breaking out to new all-time highs never seen before. So even if you bought the top, even if potentially 124,000 is the top, take solace in knowing that you're not going to be sitting here for 5 years, 10 years just to get back in the green, as with some very risky small caps, for example, which I even have been burned with. With Bitcoin, you are going to be back in the green, and even quicker if you do average down. And that is if you literally buy the top, which isn't the goal necessarily. Now, like we were talking about, watching this level hold, watching the 50 MA hold, and watching this ascending trend hold, we saw a break and a clear reaction from the market. Look at that reaction. the market is seeing the same thing we were seeing. Now it's up to Bitcoin to hold this roughly 112,000 area, a previous resistance that once we broke out, we did see a clear reaction, and it was a support along with the 50 MA back here right at around 112. I think that is where Bitcoin is going next, and I do anticipate a bounce personally. Now I do want to briefly talk about Terawulf. They're pulling back a bit. I want to give my thoughts on the chart, and I want to talk about some recent news. They did announce an upsized convertible note offering. On August 18, they announced the upsize and pricing of their $850 million offering of convertible senior notes due 2031, with an option of purchasers to buy an additional $150 million. The proceeds, estimated at $828 million, will fund data center expansion and other corporate purposes. It's expected to close on August 20, and it also includes capped call transactions to manage dilution, but there will still be some dilution. They have a certain level of dilution, but because of these capped calls, they don't face further dilution beyond a certain level, essentially. But it gives potential tax advantages, helps manage risk, such as if the price just rallies like crazy, it raises the effective conversion price, but it does limit upside. In simpler terms, they are made to minimize dilution and raise the conversion price. Now looking at Terawulf on the chart, you know, it had a roughly 100% gain on this Google News. We flashed a golden cross. Just because we now have a golden cross doesn't mean it's just going to continue up. For example, look at this golden cross right when it crossed. Would be a bullish target, a bullish signal, which really is a bullish signal, but typically it's a way to trap people. You see an initial pullback before it goes crazy. And even here, you know, we got a couple more days of green, but then a pretty big pullback. The market likes to fool people, but you know, make no mistake, this golden cross is bullish, and this Google News is very bullish for Terawulf. What I would want to see from it is consolidation at these previous resistance points. Do we consolidate here, or do we just keep selling off? The 618 on the fib puts it right back here towards the gap. It's a good chance we head towards the gap fill. People bet that it's going to fill the gap, and then it just hovers above it and fakes everybody out. But I do anticipate a little pullback from Wolf. Seeing some consolidation would be a very bullish sign. But you know, a move like this from Google into a Terawulf, I wonder what else we get. Is Microsoft watching? Apple? Meta? Surely they know that Google just made this move, and they're probably looking at potential prospects too. A way to quickly increase their compute for AI by getting into one of these Bitcoin miners / AI plays. It's basically a shortcut. Rather than them having to build out all this infrastructure, which takes a long time to do, they can get into one of these companies that already has the infrastructure built and basically back them, help them create more infrastructure, help them get bigger, which benefits them as well. But how are you guys feeling on a day like this? Are you taking advantage of Bitcoin, of the altcoins? Are you taking advantage of some of these mega caps that are having a pretty red day? Are you adding to the Bitcoin miners this late in the cycle? Always interested in what you guys are doing. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.